So we have this blood and its components. So if you see the blood and its components, we have this plasma which is 55% and platelets which is 0.01% and the red blood cells about 41%. And then you have this white blood cells also which are about 4%, the lymphocytes, basophils, eosinophils, monocytes and neutrophils. So this red blood cells are prepared in the bone marrow of a body. So there what happens is those red blood cells are prepared and it contains this hemoglobin. Why does it look red? Because of the component or pigment called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is that's why it looks red. And then you have this platelets. Now platelets are very, very important in one body. Because of the platelets, the clotting takes place. Suppose you have a cut and it starts bleeding, and if you can observe it, it bleeds for only 1 or 2 minutes, and that's because the platelets come and it seals away the track, okay, and where the blood doesn't go apart. So that platelets form a very, very important part. And then you have this white blood cells, which is again a very most important part because that decides our immunity. There's something called as the army antibodies of our body. So they fight against all these diseases. So lymphocytes, basophils, eosinophil, monocytes, all these things club together are called as the WBCs or white blood cells. And then all these things together form the blood and its components. And suppose you have, in case of dengue, what happens? You must have heard that dengue, it affects his dengue and all, and person is suffering and is low on his blood count or is low on his platelets. So what happens there? That eats away these platelets, the platelets slowly come down, and that's the worst condition. So again the platelets are reinfused so that it builds through. And then you have this red blood cells. There's one more condition called a sickle cell anemia. So anemia is nothing but deficiency of the blood, okay, deficiency of the red blood cells. And then you have the sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is nothing but sickle type, it becomes a round type of a sickle. And then what happens? It's a very, very dangerous condition where the person starts feeling down and he can't go to more energy levels. So that is also prevented by many of the therapies. So these are the blood and its components. Now going to how the pulse and blood pressure measurement is done. So it is very, very simple. So if you go through this, if you observe your pulse, you take this, and here this is the area where your pulse is felt. So what you do is you hold it like this. It is already with your 2 fingers over here. You hold it onto this. You can feel the pulse effect, okay, some lub dub, you can feel that. That's because of the blood is gushing through that. So here you hold it, all right. You can measure this, all right. You measure it you count it and hold your watcher and you count it for 15 seconds, multiply into 4, or you can do one thing. You count the pulse and count it for 30 seconds and multiply it, or you can hold it here for a minute and see your pulse. So the first thing the doctor does is sees your pulse, and the pulse is very, very important, which decides whether the person is alive or not. And now the pulse differs from person to person. Suppose say it is a smaller person, a small child, his pulse is totally different, and a bigger elderly person, his pulse is totally different. So here it goes on differing. And now let's see how the blood pressure is measured. This is called as a sphygmomanometer. The sphygmomanometer measures your blood pressure. Sometimes what happens, you'll be perspiring and you feel very, very weak, and you feel like as if everything is dwindling around. So that is how when the low blood pressure comes, or sometimes when you shiver and all, that's how you get a high blood pressure. And that's because of the high intake due to the age. What happens, our body, there's a homeostasis which is maintained. What is this homeostasis? Homeostasis is nothing but the normal maintaining of the body processes. For example, I'll give you an example here. So when you eat lots of sugar, the sugar content, the glucose content in the body is maintained at one level. So if it goes above that, the pancreas secretes the insulin, which maintains the degrees. So here in case of this also, where the blood pressure is measured, when you take this salt, when you take the sodium, okay, it is when it shoots up, the body's process is such that it comes onto the normal level. Now what happens here? First what happens, the doctor puts the cuff around here, he puts it around here, and then what happens, he inflates it. So when it goes on inflating, when it goes on inflating, so we'll see how it is actually done over here. Okay, so first he inflates it. So when the air cuff is being inflated over here, so when it's inflated, the mercury level goes off and slowly the air is being released from the cuff. So when it's released, you see the systolic and the diastolic. It means that it's a 120/80. Now I'll explain you what is systolic. So when you hold that, the stethoscope is held here, the first part of blood comes here. Okay, first drop of blood, you hear it, and the last part of blood that process, that's called a systolic and diastolic. So here the normal level should be 120/80. If it goes exceeds that, so it is not coming, it means that it's very high. And if it's still not coming above here, above 50 or 70, it's like very low. This is how the blood pressure is measured. And nowadays we have the sophisticated machines or sophisticated devices which measures your blood pressure. Okay, just put it over here, it tells. And also nowadays you have this great watches. Okay, you have this, you just put it around here, it tells your blood pressure, it tells everything. So that's how we advance in the mechanism, and this is how you measure the blood pressure and pulse. So when we say circulation, the first thing which comes in your mind is heart. Heart is a very, very essential part in our body. So do you know that heart is just the size of a fist? Yes. This is the enlarged one. This is the real heart which is there. And this you see the animated one. Here, this is the size of your heart which keeps on beating, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And that's how you get the sounds. Okay. Now let's see how does that sound occur. Okay. And what are the functions of the heart? What will happen if you get a heart attack? So let's see and let's explore the world of circulation. Well, if you have a look at the heart, if you have a look at the heart here, you can see it's pumping continuously. Here, the heart is kept in an ice chamber, okay, to make the functions active. Alright, so you have it here. So upper thing is called as atrium and the lower thing is called as ventricles. So here you see this upper two chambers, it's called as atrium, and here it's called as ventricle. So here the continuous flow of blood takes place. Alright, so in the right part it is the deoxygenated blood, in the left part it is the oxygenated blood. So it is a continuous process. It's a continuous process where you can't say, let me see, I'll control my heart, okay, and let me stop it. Well, if the heart stops, everything stops. So that can't be the process. It's a continuous process which is going on in a body, and that's how the blood is circulated throughout our body. Okay, now let's see how this heart works and what are the real functions of it. So this is a muscular organ which pumps this blood to all parts of our body. Yes, in the last class we saw how the blood and its components. So what are the blood and its components and what it consists of. So here you see how the heart pumps all part of the body. Okay, so we have a 4-chambered heart. In humans and others it's a 4-chambered heart. Well, in case of reptiles and all, it is a 3-chambered heart. So here all is 4-chambered. The upper 2 chambers called as atria, as I told in the last slide, and the lower two chambers are called as ventricles. Okay, we have the right and the left chambers. They are separated by the septum. So septum separates so that they don't mix to each other. The oxygenated and deoxygenated blood do not mix with each other, and it prevents the mixing. Okay, so here if you see the parts of the heart, you have the superior vena cava over here. Okay, the aorta, the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary is nothing but which takes it to the lungs. Pulmonary lungs, pulmonary. And then you have this pulmonary vein again here, the right atrium, the pulmonary wall, the tricuspid wall, the inferior vena cava, the left ventricle, the aortic wall, the mitral wall, the left atrium, and the pulmonary vein, and here. So this is how the heart looks like, okay, and the parts of the heart. So if you have the enlarged version, the process you can see it's like this, and here what happens actually. So you see this arrows which are coming in and going out, okay, and what happens, we'll see to the next chamber. So when the left atrium relaxes, the oxygenated from the lung, it flows through. When it relaxes, it does completely relax, it is just shift in the work, okay. And then the blood from the lungs flows through the pulmonary vein, all right, into the left atrium. When it contracts, the left ventricle expands and blood flows into it. So there's the action of this contraction and relaxation. And then the left ventricle contracts and the oxygenated blood is pumped out to the aorta. So this oxygenated blood that is pumped out to the aorta to all parts of the body. And after circulating through all parts of the body, the deoxygenated blood which is there, that comes back, that enters the right atrium and through the vena cava. So if you see the right atrium, it enters through the vena cava, and then the right atrium contracts, the right ventricle expands. Okay. So here the two, that it contracts, relax, and then the blood flows to it. The right ventricle contracts, blood is pumped through the lungs to the pulmonary artery. So there, once it goes to the pulmonary artery, there this, the lungs carbon dioxide is removed and the oxygen is supplied back into the blood. Okay. And then it gets the oxygenated blood, and again that enters the left atrium and the process repeats. Since blood flows to the heart twice the circle, it's called as double circulation. Okay, it's it's beating lub dub. Now once the the flow of the heart, so once and again that causes this, the closing and opening of the valve, lub dub, that causes it. And not only that, if you see, they say that it's a cardiac arrest, it's a heart attack. What is this? This is nothing but the walls, where you see these walls, okay, they get thickened, and what happens? The flow of blood is constricted. Once the flow of blood is constricted due to this cholesterol which accumulates into this veins and arteries, so once it accumulates, the flow of blood is constricted. When the flow of blood is constricted, there's a lot of pressure on this heart, and when there's a lot of pressure, the sum of them, it starts rapidly, and that gives a shock. With a shock, some of the muscles and some of the, you have this heart muscles, cardiac muscles, they get off, they go off, and they die. And that's how this heart attack is caused. And majority of them is caused, that's why they say exercise nicely. When you exercise nicely, the fat in our body gets reduced and the fat goes off, and there's a clean flow. Alright. So now that's about the heart. So this is how the heart works here, and it's a very important organ in our body which supplies blood flow and which also filters this blood. And you have this pulmonary, it goes through the lungs, and again it comes, you get the oxygenated and deoxygenated bloods. So if you see the veins, it carries this deoxygenated blood, okay, so it carries this bluish color, that's the deoxygenated blood, it goes back there, and again the oxygenated blood, you can't see them, so it carries the oxygenated blood throughout. The arteries carries the oxygenated blood throughout the body, and the veins carry the deoxygenated blood through the heart. And coming back to the lymph, okay, the lymph, if you see, it's a colorless fluid which is present in interstellar spaces. It forms from the plasma, okay, plasma escapes from the capillary, it is formed from that, and then lymphs drain into this lymphatic capillaries which form this lymph vessels, okay. They join into a large veins here. If you can see, these are lymph glands present all over the body, and they, they drain here, the lymph drains here, and lymph transports its digested fats and drains the excess fluid from the intercellular spaces back into the blood. It contains its lymphocytes which kills the germs and protects the bodies over here, okay. It contains that, and that is how, that also is a protective mechanism in our body. And coming back to the various types of hearts, okay, the heart in mammals, okay, all these birds have this 4-chambered hearts, and they have this right and the left chamber of the heart separated by a septum. Septum is nothing but a separation which prevents the mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood, alright, and that provides this efficient supply of oxygen. This is necessary because more energy is there to maintain the body temperature. And then if you go to the heart of amphibians and reptiles, they have this 3-chambered heart which allows them the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, because they do not use energy to maintain their body temperature. Well, we use our energy to maintain our body temperature, but they do not use that, okay. The body temperature is same as the temperature of the surroundings, and some of the insects, they are called as cold-blooded insects, alright. And then we have this heart in fishes, they have only two chambered and blood is oxygenated in the gills. Okay, if you see this, there are two types here and here, there's the varieties. Okay, circulatory paths in the vertebrates. So you have these varieties of them. There's a gill circulation, a systematic in case of fishes. Okay, and then let's go on to the transportation in plants. Well, as we have this transportation in human beings and animals, their transportation also takes place in the plants. It's a very interesting thing to see. The plants also transport many of the things. Okay, but here like food, water, minerals, everything takes place as conducting tissues called as xylem and phloem. Now let's see what is this xylem and what are these phloems. So xylem is nothing but transports this water and minerals from the roots to all parts of the plants. Okay, it consists of this xylem vessels and tracheates. If you have this is a tracheate here. It is a vessel which is specialized for the transport. So fiber cell over here. Okay, to the all parts. Okay, water and minerals enter by root by diffusion, and then due to transpiration, the suction of the force of the upward movement of the water and minerals. Okay, and then you have this water evaporates from the leaf surface. Do you see here? Water enters here, and then it transports to all the parts of the plant. And now coming to this phloem, that it transports food from the leaves to the other parts of the plant, and this process is called as translocation. The phloem consists of sieve tubes. If you see the sieve tubes, okay, and companion cells. Food from the leaves is transferred to the limbs with the energy of ATP molecules. These ATP molecules are there which gives the energy in the plants. As we have this ATP molecules in our body, the same thing is followed in the plants. And due to osmotic pressure, water enters the phloem and helps in the transportation of the food. So here you have the xylem, you see the C tubes. Okay, so there are perforation plates here and the tracheates which transport this water to us. All this, from the food from one part to the other part. This it transports the water and minerals. Here you have this phloem which transports all the food material from one part to another part. So you have the sieve plate. If you see this fiber over here, these are sieve areas, the companion cell and seal elements. It passes through on here, and through this pores, it is given through whole part of the body. So you can see how it moves through here, the end wall and the sieve tube and the companion cell. And this is how it moves across. So that's how it moves across, and here you have this phloem and the xylem. So these are the most important part in the transportation in plants. Now moving on to the another very more example which is very important. It's called as the excretion. Okay, imagine if there's no excretion, then all the toxins and everything build up in our body. Once it builds up in our body, and that's it, we are succumbed to so many diseases. Okay, and not only that, abnormalities and all which takes place. So there has to be excretion. Only when these waste products are excreted, so here you have when these waste products are excreted, then only the normal body functioning takes place. Here, in case of this excretion, okay, it's a process by which waste products are removed by this metabolic activity from the body in case of humans. And then in unicellular organisms, the waste products are removed from the cells into the surroundings by diffusion. Diffusion is nothing but movement of this particles from one concentration to the another concentration. Alright, here you have this multicellular organisms and the waste products which are removed from the specialized organs. Well, can you guess what is the organ which is responsible for excretion over here? Yes, it is the kidneys. The kidneys are the most important part here which excretes, okay, which excretes so many of the wastes through the urinary system, okay, through the excretory system, through the urine it excretes. Alright, so you see this excretion in human beings. So this is the excretory system in human beings, okay. It consists of this pair of this kidneys and the pair of this ureters, okay, the urinary bladder and the ureters and the urethra. Alright, each kidney has a number of excretory units called nephrons. So if you have a look at this is the kidney, and you have this ureter which carries that urine here to the bladder which collects the the urine, and the sphincter muscle which says whether you have the urge to urinate, and it goes back to the urethra. So this is the process over here. Let's go into detail here. So you have this inferior vena cava and the aorta which is passing through here, and the right adrenal gland over here which is on top of the kidney, and the right artery over here, the right adrenal vein, so right kidney, and this is the right part. Here you have the left part where you have the left adrenal gland and left adrenal vein, the left adrenal artery, and the left kidney and the left artery, left vein. So this is that, and then you have this right and left ureter which carries the urine here and the opening of the bladder here, ureter here, and it fills up the bladder, so urinary bladder, and this is sphincter muscle. Sphincter muscle tells us whether we have the urge to urinate. Once you have the urge to urinate, when you have lots of liquid, it gets accumulated in this urinary bladder, and then when it comes to sphincter muscle, it tells us whether it's, remember, whether it's, we have the urge, when it expands it, we have the urge to urinate, and then it is passed on through this urethra. Now let's see exactly what happens here. So if we have a look at this excretory system, okay, so you have a look at this process which is going on. So this is unfiltered blood which is going on here in here. So when it goes on in here there is so many things, Bowman capsules and nephrons and all, they absorb what is required, okay, the blood which is that, it purifies the blood, it purifies it completely, and which is the pure blood, it sends like a filtered blood is sent out to its renal vein, and then you have this, the urine is out, is the urine which is the unfiltered one, which is the waste one, that is filtered out through this ureter. Okay, so this is how the process which takes place inside the kidney, and kidney is the most important part after the heart. So heart, lungs, kidney, this is the most important part in our body. So you see here there's a renal artery, okay, so it carries out this blood, unfiltered blood, and then it goes off, then it comes here, it does the process, filtering process, and the filtered part it takes here, and then the unfiltered one, or the urine what we call, that is given out and outside to the bladder. Okay, now looking at this, what happens here, the Bowman's capsule that goes here enters into this glomerulus. Okay, you have this proximal tube, the distal tube from the another end, from the collecting depth, and this is a loop of Henry over here. So here if you see this, the glomerulus, okay, the Bowman's capsule and the Bowman's capsule, so it enters here, okay, whatever is the filtered one, it takes it here, and the unfiltered one, that is taken to the urine, to the ureter, to the bladder. So this is how the process takes place, where this Bowman's capsule, all these things together, they absorb the filtered, they filter this blood, okay, whatever this is unfiltered one, is thrown out. Now imagine what happens to a person when his kidneys go off. They say this, kidneys has failed, no more, nothing can be done, and suddenly he feels that there's a swelling in the body, okay, the body is getting swollen, and then suddenly he feels uneasiness. Yes, can you guess what does the doctor suggest for that? Yes, he suggests something called as the dialysis. Now what is this dialysis? We'll see what it is. It is an artificial way of removing of the urine, okay, from the body, because the kidneys are not working. Some places you have this heart transplantation which is done, and the kidney transplantation which is done, which is a tedious process, okay, which involves lots of finances and which involves lots of time. So to cut short that, what they do, they go to the process of this dialysis. Okay, let's see what is this dialysis is. Okay, and before that we'll come to the nephron. So nephron has a cup-like structure called as a Bowman's capsule. We'll explain you what is this, exactly what it is. Okay, and then it contains a bundle of capillaries called the glomerulus. So what happens here, the Bowman's capsule leads to a tubular structure which joins into a collecting duct. Now that collects everything. There the renal artery brings a nitrogenous waste like ammonia, urea, uric acid, everything it bends into that, and then the artery brings the nitrogenous waste like again the ammonia, uric acid, everything. Then you have this excess water, salts, etc. into the nephron. So that filters the nitrogenous waste like water, salts, which passes through the tubular structure into the collecting duct. So all this is that filters it, and then you have this waste that passes through the ureters into the urinary bladder, and that is sent out through the urethra as a urine. Okay, the usual products like amino acid, glucose, salts are reabsorbed by the capillaries around the tubular structure, and that goes into the renal vein. So this is the detailed process which goes through into the nephrons. Alright, so let us see excretion in plants. Now as we have this excretion in human beings or the animals, we have this excretion in plants too. So in the plants, what happens? The gaseous waste products like, during respiration, the carbon dioxide and the photosynthesis, the carbon dioxide is absorbed and the oxygen is given out. It's removed through the stomata. Okay. Excess of water is also removed through the stomata. So this process is called as transpiration. So you must have observed when you are in a hot summer days. Okay. There is nothing, but when you stand below a tree, you feel the coolness. You must be wondering, why is this coolness? It is not because of the shade. It is because of transpiration which is taking place. Because of the transpiration, it gives a cool effect. And because of that, that gives out, wherever there's maximum trees, there's lots of rain. Why? This transpiration is given out, the carbon dioxide, the oxygen and water is given out. That again in turn takes it out to the clouds, that evaporation, and then you have this clouds forming and then you have the rain. Alright. So these waste products are stored in the leaves and removed when the leaves dry and fall off. Okay, some waste products are stored in the vacuoles. You have this vacuoles, and some waste products like gums and resins are stored in the old xylem cells. Okay, and some waste products are removed through the roots. So if you see how it is transported, so here the waste products are moving out to the stomata. It is going outside here. So okay, so it comes from the roots here, then it passes on to the xylem and phloem and the waste product which are excreted out to the leaves. So if this is the enlarged version here, you see the roots, it comes from the roots, and this is a branch over here, you enlarge it, okay, and then these are the leaves, okay, it goes up. And you must have also seen this raisins. Raisins are nothing but gums and everything. So some tree, when you just chip it off, okay, you get this sticky material. For example, the rubber, you get sticky material, that's also resin. And for example, also you get this small things, okay, liquid like sap like things which is from the, that's also a secondary product, So this is how the plants excrete out. Now coming on to the last part, we have this hemodialysis. Okay, this is a very important part where person is suffering from this kidney disease and kidneys are worn out. The kidneys totally go off, and there the filtering has to be done externally. So there's something called as the hemodialyzer, which takes this, which separates out the urine and then puts back the purified blood back into the blood. So if you see here from the aorta, it is taken, okay, from the veins it is taken here, and you have this pressure pump which maintains the pressure, okay, the blood pump, it maintains the pressure, and then this is a heparin pump. Heparin is injected, okay, and then it goes out to the dialysing filter, wherein it has, that's a filter where it, there are some filters there which have this sieves, okay, as you have the sieve. Have you heard of the sieves? Your mother sieves this, art and everything to remove this, the bigger thicker particles are retained, the small particles are given out. So same thing, the sieves are there, okay, where it's a very microns, they have very few microns size, that is put on there, and that separates out only the liquids which are required, okay, the waste which is required out. So that waste is taken, that is nothing but the urine. So that is taken on and that is separated out here, okay, and there's a diacylate which is there, okay, there's a diacylate which is, that is a clean diacylate which is again collected back into the here, and then you have this, okay, the purified blood which goes through here, this pressure monitor, again it's sent back here. So this is how this hemodialyzer works. This is how the dialysis process works, and this dialysis process is common, has become common in many people, okay, and also person who have this diabetics should be very active, okay, or else the heart, kidney or the lungs is affected, okay, and you have this the basic things where you can maintain good things in your kidneys. Drink appropriate quantities of water where it separates out all the things, and have good amount of nutrition and a nice exercise routine where you keep healthy, okay. Now this is about this chapter. Let's see few of the questions where you can answer. Now test your skills on this, okay. These are some of the questions, try answering them, okay. What is the basic requirement of living organisms to obtain energy, and what is the mode of nutrition of fungi, okay. Explain photosynthesis. What is the function of respiratory system? Name the organisms which live without oxygen. What is blood and why is it red? What is xylem and what is phloem tissue? What is meant by dialysis? So see if you can answer these questions, test your skills on this, okay? And by this, we end up this chapter, the first chapter, that is, life processes. Thank you, hope you had a good time, and see you, Sai Ram.